Morning, everybody. We are here on July 2nd. It's a Thursday in the year 2026, according to some. My name is Ryan Dorsey. I'm the chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. To my left, I'm joined by Vice Chair of the committee, Vice President of City Council, Sharon Green Middleton from the 6th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Farther left, we have Councilman Zach Blanchard of the 11th District. Far right, we have Councilman Paris Gray of the 8th District. To my immediate right, we have our committee staff member, Tony Leva. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing very well, thanks, sir.
Good morning. We are joined here by representatives from the mayor's office, housing department, police department, DOT, finance, law, planning, and parking authority. And we have our harbor master with us. We have 4 bills in the committee today. We had 5. One was canceled in order to address a process problem. We will take these in the following order today. We will do 260178 Harbor, Baltimore Harbor transfer of authority to Department of Transportation. Then we will do 260197 RPP Area 48 Riverside revisions. Then 260175 street names, authority to change suffix. And then we will do, conclude with 260153 measurement of building height gambrel roofs. The first bill on the agenda here, 260178 Baltimore Harbor transfer of authority to Department of Transportation. This bill comes from the administration, and so I will ask Isaiah from the Mayor's Office of Government Relations to present the bill to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Isaiah Griffith, Mayor's Office of Government Relations. I'm actually going to turn it over to my DOT colleague to let them take it away. They're very well versed in this bill, and I think it would be better for them to speak to the intent.
Okay, great. Come on up to the podium here or take a desk, whatever. Podium's good. Tell us who you are and what's up.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Brett Thorne. I am the Acting Assistant Deputy Director of Planning and Sustainable Transportation at Baltimore City DOT. And I am here to talk today about the Harbor Master and an amendment to Article 10. So I'll just jump right into the PowerPoint. So we can go to the second slide. So we're talking about the Harbor Master this morning. So what does the Harbor Master do? I think we've all probably heard of the Harbor Master, but he has quite a range of responsibilities. So some of the chief responsibilities within the Harbor Master office are managing docking at Baltimore City municipal piers. We have about 5,000 linear feet of docking space that's available to the public. So the Harbor Master manages that, collects fees, provides customer service to people who are visiting the harbor, monitoring wharfage and land use agreements. We have several entities in the city that have essentially leases with the city affecting public access to the water, as well as bringing in revenue for the general fund, leveraging marine construction expertise to consult on waterfront development, and also kind of be another set of eyes on state of good repair for infrastructure around the water. Encouraging boater compliance with safety rules in coordination with BPD, the fire department, and some of the other entities that have a role in managing access to the water, coordinating maritime logistics with emergency management and event stakeholders. For events like Sail 250, I think it's very fitting that we're talking about this just a couple days after Sail 250 wrapped up. So the Harbor Master certainly had a big role in the city's planning for that event. And then finally, advocating for maritime issues with community groups, developers, and industry. So where does the Harbor Master live within Baltimore City DOT? We have an org chart shown here. Of course, at the top is DOT Director Veronica P. Macbeth, and then directly beneath her are Brandon Buckner, our Deputy Director, and Patrick Fleming, Chief of Staff. I report up to them. The Harbor Master is within my division, and then below the Harbor Master is a community aide. So we can go to the next slide. In terms of the area of responsibility, so where is kind of the Harbor Master's purview? We have the northwest branch of the Patapsco River shown here kind of to the north, and the middle branch of the Patapsco River to the south. It's his area of responsibility is essentially from Fort McHenry, if you draw a straight line to Canton Waterfront Park to the north, and then from Fort McHenry to Masonville Cove to the south. That is kind of the area that he manages. So why are we here this morning? Why are we here presenting? So Article 10 of the City Code currently places harbor rulemaking with DHCD, but DHCD does not actively manage the harbor, or they don't engage in rulemaking for the waters of the Baltimore Harbor anymore. So with this amendment, the authority would be transferred from DHCD to DOT. So the solution: over the last 14 months, the harbor master and I and several others within DOT have been working with DHCD, BPD, several other entities within the city, as well as the state, and even up to the Coast Guard, to develop this amendment to Article 10. And we can get into kind of some of the details about what is in the amendment here on the next slide. So these are, on the left are the subtitles within Article 10 right now, and then on the right and called out in red are some of the sort of antiquated elements of Article 10. For example, Subtitle 4 deals with the municipal airport. There's an entire subtitle that deals with the municipal airport, which closed more than 60 years ago. Subtitles 7 and 8 deal with explosives and ammonium nitrates and the city's regulation of these materials being brought into the harbor, but that's no longer a city function. That's managed by MPA. And then my personal favorite is Subtitle 9, which deals with steam-propelled vessels, kind of regulating like the smokestacks on steam-propelled vessels and control of burning materials on board these ships. That's not really an issue that we run into anymore. So we are proposing to repeal or remove those elements of Article 10. And we can go to the next slide. So we are requesting your support to transfer the rulemaking authority from DHCD to DOT, to define the harbor master more clearly within DOT, to restate the authority of the harbor master to collect boater fees and establish special enforcement powers. And on the next slide, amending and restating the language in subtitles 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and then removing some of that outdated language that I mentioned on the previous slides. And that is everything. We're happy to take questions as they come.
Thank you. I have a quick question, then I'm going to look at some of the technical stuff about this repealing. But one of the matters that I'm aware of, and I know Councilman Parker, before I begin, we've been joined here by Councilwoman Felicia Porter from the 10th District and Councilman Parker from the 1st District. I know that Councilman Parker is aware of this. We've had a lot of discussion in this committee about street lighting. And, you know, we run into a little bit of like, whose responsibility is it when we talk about like the lights that are on the edges of city parks versus the ones that are a few feet into city parks. And then lighting along the promenade is a whole thing completely separate from that. Whereas, you know, edge of park is DOT, inside the park is Rec and Parks. Everything along the waterfront is none of the above. It's not even proposed to be any city agencies to maintain it. It is the responsibility of the adjacent property owners, and the means to get it remedied if there's something faulty in the lighting presently is for DHCD to issue property maintenance violations or citations, because all that waterfront is covered under, what is it, an urban renewal plan or some sort of agreement that makes them responsible to maintain it. And so how will DOT exercise that? Because that's different than anything else that DOT presently performs any sort of enforcement authority for. How would that work under DOT if they're not able to, or in the practice of issuing property-related citations? Like, for example, if I have a problem of a person parking a car illegally on a city street in front of a house, DOT writes the citation. But if a person is illegally parking that car on the front lawn of the house, that's not a DOT problem. DOT can't, won't, doesn't, whatever the case may be, write the citation for property maintenance violation. How is this going to translate at the waterfront in a way that it apparently doesn't translate in other neighborhoods?
So my understanding is that DOT has pretty broad maintenance responsibilities for things along the waterfront, like the promenade, obviously, and lighting and fountains around the Inner Harbor and things like that. I think DOT's maintenance division would probably be best placed to answer the exact how. As far as this bill, the harbor master, what we see is kind of like another set of eyes on the infrastructure and kind of a catalyst. For example, like before Sale 250, portions of Broadway Pier were in need of some repairs, and so the harbor master kind of helped kind of catalyze getting that work done before Sale 250 happened. In terms of the actual mechanics of how citations are issued for things like lighting violations or things like that, I can't really speak to how that works.
Okay, I feel like that's like a pretty core, I understand like the condition of piers, the condition of the promenade brick and structure and the piling and such is like the kind of greatest gravity of like kind of maintenance concern and stuff. But the street lighting or the promenade lighting issue is one of like sort of a bread and butter issue for everyday users of the promenade, even when it's in its best condition. And right now the only thing I know is that we rely on or would rely on DHCD's property maintenance citation powers in order to make the adjacent property owners perform the maintenance that they are required to do it. It's not going to ever, there's nothing here and anything I've ever heard of to make it the city's responsibility to actually do the maintenance. Somebody has to be able to exercise that enforcement power, and so I just need to know how that's going to work. It looks like Mr. Harbor Master.
Good morning, Mike McGady, Harbor Master DOT. There's an existing baseline services agreement under the Waterfront Management Authority, under Waterfront Partnership, that designates maintenance responsibility for the harbor.
To whom?
So it is a baseline services agreement signed by many different agencies that sits with the Waterfront Management Authority, which is underneath Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore, that designates maintenance responsibility for the harbor, and it does include lighting under DOT.
So how does that work then? So the Water Management Authority, which is under the Waterfront Partnership?
Correct.
Can you explain the Water Management Authority?
That is under the Waterfront Partnership Management District. So they have established a Waterfront Management Authority that's represented by several of the stakeholders right around the harbor. So they have a website, and all of the membership there is available online. So back in 2023, several agencies signed this baseline services agreement, and it lays out what each agency's responsibility will be.
And so DOT is, under this agreement, responsible to maintain the lighting along the promenade?
Correct.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair.
All right, I'm going to go to Councilman Parker.
Just for the sake of clarity here, at least I hope clarity. Just a reminder for all of us that the waterfront management zone that is subject to the special tax rate and the agreement between all these agencies and the waterfront partnership only governs a relatively small portion of the entire waterfront that we are discussing here, ranging from Fells Point around to Rusty Scupper. So this is true, and there's a very clearly defined agreement for that portion of it, but there are long miles of the promenade and the waterfront where there lacks a promenade that are not subject to that agreement in particular.
Thank you for that clarification. That really helps. And the transfer of authority here is for an area that is larger than the Waterfront Management Authority's area then. And it's my understanding that this standard of DHCD being the responsible agency to hold the adjacent property owners accountable for the operation and good condition of lighting along the promenade extends for the entire length of the promenade wherever property is privately owned or managed, I guess. So just because I've been here for a decade and I have run into this whole DOT won't write a citation for the car parked on the lawn because that's DHCD's responsibility, like I need to get to the bottom of this. Luciano?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Luciano Diaz for DOT. So the issue of code enforcement essentially stems from, even though DOT has the ability to appoint special enforcement officers who are able to do general code enforcement, every agency has a different, essentially, system of citations, citation books, and DOT's citation books don't include the general code violations for like waterfront lighting or illegally parking on a private property. So it's not a matter of are our officers empowered to do these things,
Right.
because we do have those, but it's a matter of different agencies have different sets of citations that they're trained to issue.
Yep.
So this legislation doesn't necessarily take away DHCD's ability to do this enforcement on the waterfront, because these are still considered code violations.
Right, but it does transfer like the responsibility to pay attention to the waterfront, right? And it specifically am I wrong about this? I mean, we're basically saying it's the harbor master, DOT's job to look at things along the waterfront and leverage, everything that should be happening along the waterfront.
Yeah, I think the impetus for this was really things that are happening in the water. So, for example, collection of fees from transient boaters and things like that. The extension, I think, onto like landside and things like maintaining lights and things like that. I think DHCD, if I'm not mistaken, would still have the ability to cite for those things.
But your slide number 2, what does the harbor master do? Point number 2, monitor wharfage and land use agreements impacting public access. That's textbook what we're talking about here. That's not what's on the water. That's the stuff that's happening on the first 100 feet off the water, basically.
So just on the wharfage agreement item, the harbor master does not manage those agreements. Those agreements are actually distributed to DHCD. BDC has several. DOT has a few. So we're not taking all of the wharfage agreements. Management of those individual agreements would still stay with the entities that initially brought them forward. This would be more like the harbor master is advising on, like, if a new wharfage agreement is being developed. For example, I think on Pier 5, there was a cruise company that for a couple years was boarding and alighting passengers from Pier 5. And a couple months after the harbor master started, he said, "Do they have a wharfage agreement?" and initiated the process of developing a new wharfage agreement, which I believe is housed within the Department of Real Estate now.
Okay. Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess looking at your slides and I guess first of all, I serve on NACO's National Disaster Task Force and was involved with going to DC, trying to advocate for, FEMA and so on, and knowing that the Port of Baltimore is number 1 and 2, import-export. All of these waters connect. I guess I'm interested in, do you work with all these other entities in creating a cohesive disaster plan? Are you in consistent communication and partners with the Port of Baltimore? I mean, and are you connected with the business? I mean, it's a lot going on in the whole section. Just kind of explain all of those connectivities.
Thanks for the question, Mike McGady, DOT Harbor Master. So we participate in the Port-Wide Harbor Safety Committee, which meets quarterly at the Association of Maryland Pilots. So we're constantly in communication about safety regulations, maintenance of aids to navigation, and really just have a very great collaboration with the port community. They were pretty happy when we started showing up because it had been lacking. So yes, there's a very solid relationship and a lot of regular planning that goes on, recognizing that the commercial port is a big generator, but there's also recreational uses that need to coexist in the same waterway.
I just wanted that to be kind of a matter of record, that there is, you're not out there by yourself and not being partners with all the other entities, and that's an important piece. And if there is some kind of written plan for specifically disasters, could we get a copy of it as?
Absolutely.
You can give it to the Tony with the staff.
Yes,
Appreciate that.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Glad to have these two gentlemen here to answer this question for me. As you can probably guess, I'm going to ask about water taxi, harbor connector stuff, as I've asked both of y'all about quite a bit. So as you both know, I am very interested in general in having a functional and productive water taxi system in the city of Baltimore. A, because that would be useful. B, because it would be awesome and unique to Baltimore. And C, because it costs way less to do that than other types of public transit because the water's already there. We don't have to bring the water or anything, right? What does this legislation change in any way our ability to create a maximum speed exception for public transit vehicles, specifically the harbor connector right system, to go above the current 6-knot max speed in across the harbor?
So thank you for the question, Councilman Blanchard. I will probably let Mike speak to this, but we have engaged with the Waterway Safety Committee that he mentioned about that possibility. And it's very much a collaborative effort with Maryland DNR and the Coast Guard in terms of setting that regulation and allowing allowances for like transit vehicles and things like that. But Mike, do you want to add anything on that?
Thank you, Mike McGady, DOT Harbor Master. So the waters of the Baltimore Harbor are also considered state waters. So when we would want to make a change, then we would submit to the Department of Natural Resources a request for a change to boating regulation. So there's a path to do it. We know how to do it. And it's interesting because that speed restriction really is the northwest branch. And if we're looking forward and looking to future development in the Westport area and future development at Baltimore Peninsula, a harbor connector route, say from the inner harbor all the way around, is a long trip. It'd be good to be able to go a little faster, but there are known pathways to doing that. Similar to what we also hope to do in the future is create some mooring fields that will give boaters an option and also generate revenue for the general fund.
Okay, so, and I don't mean to deviate from the bill, but this is something I'm really interested in because going 6 knots from Westport to anywhere in the Inner Harbor is, you just would never do it because it's going to take too long, right? And so, and we've been talking about this for a year now, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but like I would like for this to happen. I would be worried that someone at Maryland Department of Natural Resources who has no bureaucratic reason to care about any of this would find some bad reason to not support it. And then, so does changing the authority here, does it facilitate like our ability to ask the state or do anything to?
It has no impact on that kind of rulemaking.
Okay.
What we would do is prepare our case, build our support, go to Natural Resources and partner with them, go through the Harbor Safety Committee, as previously mentioned.
And I think what the bill does is it also clarifies that there is a position in the city of Baltimore that works on this kind of thing, that being the harbor master. But like Mike said, it doesn't give us the ability or remove the ability. It's just sort of like this position exists, and they're concerned with things that are happening in the water.
The process is the same for that. Okay, last thing, I'll just note that with the RFP out, or about to be out or whatever, for new vessels, I think my understanding is the current vessels really kind of top out at 8 knots. So if we wanted something to go 9 knots, just going to note related to that, right? So it's important to be thinking about how fast it could go, assuming that we're able to find a better vessel for it and be able to change the rules. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for talking about knots. Didn't know we were talking about knots today. Love it. Councilman Parker, did you have something else? Okay, great. Well, look at us. We're so lucky. We have, 3 out of the 4 waterfront representing members of the council here on this committee. And we have our 2, we're like bookended here by our 2 most experienced mariners. Council. We got the Marine and we got the Mariner. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having spent many days with actual sailors in recent days, I will very humbly suggest I have very little expertise compared to them. A few things, these are not in a particular order. And if we need to take a break and come back, Mr. Chair, I'm glad to, work through my questions best I can. This calls for renewed attention to the authority of the harbor master. First of all, the existence of a harbor master and the responsibility of the harbor master for transient docking and public docks. My understanding, and just from being around the waters, there's very little signage indicating this these days. Is there a plan to, following this passage, to improve signage so that people know how to contact the harbor master and what's expected of them, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, absolutely. And it's almost like you were eavesdropping on us before this hearing started because we were just talking about signage and we need to get some more signs printed. We have under Mike, started installing more. There were several faded no docking signs at publicly accessible points around the harbor, and we've started replacing those with dock here signs that has the radio channel on it and the phone number and things like that. And Mike, I don't know if you want to say more, but short answer, yes.
Along those lines, then, what's our capacity to monitor the public docks right now? Do we have a network of cameras set up or things like that, just to keep an eye on things for a central place? I know Mike's out and about a lot, but what does that look like? And get another operational thing. What are the hours of operation? So, right, I mean, when will the radio be monitored and the harbor master essentially be open for business?
I'm Mike Negati, DOT Harbor Master. We work with the MView system around the harbor. Actually, the most important camera for me is on top of the Marriott. It gives me a nice view of the comings and goings. There are also a lot of cameras, as you might expect, in the inner harbor proper. We're working to get more visibility in Fells Point. A lot of those cameras just don't face the water. So that's, I think, an important thing that we're working on. And the second part of the question, sir?
Hours of operations. I mean, the channel is going to be monitored from, what hour to what hour?
Right. So, our hours mirror other private marinas, 5 to 9, or excuse me, 9 to 5. And then on weekends, if there are events, then we will be out. Concerts at Pier 6, obviously, Sail 250, First Thursdays at Canton Waterfront Park. So I'm blessed with a very excellent community aid, so that's a real force multiplier when we need to be in 2 places at once. So yeah, it's not a 24/7 thing, but I do answer a lot of calls at different hours.
Thank you. There's a new definition of Baltimore Harbor at the beginning of this piece of legislation. I'm curious, how does that compare to what definition were we using before? I didn't see that part removed from it. Just for the sake of my colleagues here, the new definition runs from Fort McHenry to Canton Waterfront Park and northwest from there, and then runs westward in Councilwoman Porter's district from Masonville Cove to Fort McHenry. So what were we working with?
So before this time, the language was very murky, and there are kind of overlaying levels of authority between kind of local and state agencies. So there wasn't any real clear definition beyond establishment of pier headlines, where we just say, hey, you can't do any new development beyond this point without going through now hopefully the Director of Transportation or her designee. Because Director Macbeth is, I think, very visionary about the water being a sustainable mode of transportation. So when we looked at what the harbor master's role should be, we kind of did a line that would cover the city-owned waterfront, ending at Canton Waterfront Park. To the east of that is commercial, so Rucker Terminals and some other industrial. So there is that kind of natural dividing line between commercial port, state management, and what I believe we should be looking at as far as the city's land below water, or what is the city doing? And then now with advancements in the Middle Branch, then it made sense to keep an eye on issues there with the development of Westport and Baltimore Peninsula. Interestingly, the whole water to the west of Hanover Street Bridge, which is a bascule span, and that bridge needs help. It needs replacement at some point. And then there's some very interesting federal regulations there about that waterway, and if we want to not build another movable bridge. So just that kind of ongoing discussion. But that made sense as far as what we're able to do in our small vessel named Miss Dottie. So that's our patrol vessel. So just to keep an eye on that part of things, and then collaborate with our partners on the bigger Patapsco River.
Sure. Recognizing that there are some Maryland Port Administration facilities inside that line, North and South Locust Point, as well as some private industrial spaces, Domino Sugar, for example, things like that. Some things down on the south side of Fairfield, I suppose, maybe. Okay. I have other questions, Mr. Chair, but I'm willing to pause. All right. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Porter, quickly.
Great.
I mean, I don't mean to say quickly, rush you. We'll go to you and then we'll come back to Councilman Parker.
No worries. And just to follow up on that, signage, I know safety is a huge issue in the area. Are you all going to develop any type of safety plan as it relates to the harbor? We've had a tragedy earlier this year where it kind of really elevated the safety protocols that need to be heightened, not just in the harbor, but also in Westport area as well.
Yes. Yeah, we have actually, within the past month, been working with the Waterfront Partnership and the Mayor's Office and some others on sort of some strategies maybe to improve safety. And certainly the harbor master's role is very heavy on safety and monitoring things like availability of life rings, and when rings are missing, making sure that we're reordering them and things like that.
Do we have an ETA on when that safety plan will be finalized and shared with the council?
We do not. I don't know that there's like a formal document that's in development right now. I think that's certainly the kind of thing that we would want to look at once we kind of get Mike going in his role more.
Okay.
But yeah, there's not a formal ETA for something like that.
Okay, and so I would just encourage, once you come into this role, really kind of sharing with the council. I know, again, we have 3 of the sitting members that touch the water here, and so making sure to share that with us maybe at a future briefing in the fall. Thank you.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page, I want to call it up particularly. There's a section here, a revised section on discharge fines and enforcement. Page 18 in my copy, 47. Just a few questions here. I see the fines are increased. I think that certainly makes sense, especially given how serious illegal discharge into waterways are. I noticed that and this is echoing previous language, but just to point out that the geographic expansiveness of this is huge, because it covers not only the harbor as defined before, but any stream or sewer running therein too, right? So it covers the entire watershed, including, well, outside of the city lines at this point, but I don't know how far. So wanted to note that and that poses an interesting, I mean, obviously, Mike personally isn't running around the city monitoring discharge of gasoline or oil into our stormwater system, but presumably other folks in the city will be in charge of enforcing this and can add it to their work. The other question I had was specific to exactly what kinds of discharge are we talking about. So as I look at it, I see any substance or waste, which is very expansive, to flow into these things I already mentioned, any substance or waste. And then after saying, all right, any substance or waste to flow into Baltimore Harbor, any stream or sewer running there into any gasoline, oil, gas, tar, other lees or dregs. And so it's unclear if the expansiveness of any substance or waste to flow into these waterways is limited by the description of gasoline, oil, gas, tar, or other lees or dregs, or if that is merely given as an example of some kinds of waste. I don't know if the law department has an opinion or if there needs to be clarification there, but I am curious, what kinds of discharge are we trying to govern in that section?
Hi, Mike McGady, Harbor Master DOT. So the idea is to B&I to look for things that are unusual. We all remember last year with the overfilling of tanks that ended up with, fuel in the water. So having some ability to partner and be more active in that kind of realm, I think fits the role. With the recent Sail 250 event, there was a little sheen in the water in the Inner Harbor. So we were able to identify it early in the morning, go to the multi-agency command center running the event, and eventually get the right people engaged to do what needed to be done. So it's really just to be kind of in that loop of collaboration, to be able to, speedily address what's going on.
So what I hear is that it's intended to be very expansive, like that the language of any substance or waste is intended to cover a variety of circumstances, and
Meant
that
to be broad because you don't know until you see it.
we had the vinegar issue in the Jones Falls. We've seen any number of things come up.
Right.
Okay, I appreciate that. There's language here about the maintenance of private piers within the Inner Harbor area, and so we'd love to hear you speak about that. In particular, things that I'm curious about, I see the fines are increased, those seem appropriate. There's a definition of, the language is bulkheads, docks, piers, pilings, and wharves. Okay, that seems to cover a lot of different pieces of waterfront infrastructure, but I'm curious if there are things that we might find along the waterfront that wouldn't qualify as those. I'm curious to think what's included and what's excluded, if you think about
Right.
that. There's also language of abandoned. We have a few abandoned wharves, piers, pilings that exist, which have been abandoned so long they have become part of the landscape and the ambiance of certain communities, perhaps. And so perhaps the harbor master has discretion there. But I was wondering if you'd weigh in on those two things in particular. We do have some abandoned things which have kind of been accepted over the years, and are we planning on changing that? And then if there's a distinction between the kinds of waterfront infrastructure which we're intending to hold people accountable for and those which are not within the purview of this legislation.
I believe the kind of the maritime infrastructure mainly refers to kind of the built environment in the water. So for example, around Harbor Point, for example, there's a lot of riprap or rocks. So I'm not necessarily looking at that. I'm looking perhaps more closely at an abandoned marina right now that when the wind blows, a piece breaks off and it floats into the navigable waterway. And we've responded no less than 6 times to try to address that. So it's that kind of, when you see it, you know it. It's not right, it's unsafe, needs to be fixed, but it is mostly built infrastructure.
If I can offer up 2 examples, which I think may be on the line of this, but you're the one interpreting the law, so I want to hear from you. The section of the promenade that's currently under construction along Anchorage,
Yes.
has a fixed bulkhead. It's it may be over the water, but it's firmly attached to the ground. There's grass growing on top of it and brick and things like that. That would strike me as not falling into piers, pilings, wharves, bulkheads.
Bulkheads.
So maybe it does qualify as under your jurisdiction. Another section of the promenade is decking on top of pilings, all wood, over top of the water, open to the water. It strikes me that under this law, the harbor master would have the ability to say, put this in good and safe order now and face fines otherwise. Is that interpretation correct?
Yes. So a pier structure would be included.
Great. And the Anchorage portion would be too, maybe something like that?
Yes. So interestingly, my family marine construction business built that in the 70s. So I'm quite familiar with it.
Yep.
The promenade has a very interesting arrangement where certain portions of it, the maintenance responsibility is on the city versus other areas which are the responsibility of the developer.
In this case, the Anchorage portion is the city's responsibility, and the other portion I was referencing is not, so.
Right.
Abandoned wharves, structures,
Those are opportunities. I think it's, in future use, it's easier and to get a permit to replace something than it is to build a new thing. The fact that those are there, it's something that we as a city might want to look at as future opportunities. I think, those things, like you said, have been there a long time. So it's just a matter of making a plan and building support and getting financing to, make the city's waterfront experience better.
Very good. The last question I have is, I think, really simple, and we saw this a lot with Sale 250. There's a section on vehicles on piers, right? Again, the definition of pier, I'm sure it is clearly defined in here. I didn't look at it. But for example, there were a number of vehicles on the end of Pier 4 coming to and from the ships that were there. There was an ice cream truck parked for multiple days on the end of Pier 5, which I might have called in more than once for frustration at their being parked in a public, in a pedestrian area. Anything like that would fall under the jurisdiction of the harbor master, or the DOT anyway.
So if you consider the promenade as a public park, so it's one of the interesting things about this infrastructure is that everybody kind of has a role in it, so nobody has a defining role in it. So the idea is to, collaborate with the city agencies and maybe get back to a point where vehicle access on the brick promenade needs to be approved rather than just assumed. But nobody's minded the store for a long time. So we hope to do that.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll note that the Department of Consumer Protection and Business Licensing is also in charge of the licensing for mobile vendors. So they are the ones probably to call about that, but also that if parking or stopping on a promenade is actually prohibited, or on a pier is actually prohibited as an area as part of public right-of-way, then also DOT can take a crack at that enforcement there through TEOs even. I'll also note just generally, I love updating old antiquated laws as much as I also love seeing insanely antiquated laws like the one that says bicycle riding, no trick or fancy riding, which we should probably still repeal because apparently that means it's illegal to do a wheelie in Baltimore City. But this one also has the joyous line of the harbor master shall cause all watermelons and other fruit, fish, vegetables, and refuse to be removed from any wharf. Councilman Bullock, thank you for joining us. I'd like to hold off on voting this bill today until we get a little clarity on the enforcement and how we expect for the maintenance of lighting and other things related to those private property portions of the promenade clarified. We have a committee hearing scheduled for 1 week from today, so I would ask that we get these answers and any other kind of lack of clarity sorted out in the next week so that we can come back and vote on this next week. We need to do agency reports. We will go to them while we're here. Thank you. So, Law Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Law Department approves for form and legal sufficiency. We did recommend some amendments, which my understanding is that DOT is going to introduce them. I reviewed them yesterday, and they reflect our recommendations, so they are also approved for form and legal sufficiency.
Okay, in the bill packet here, Tony, I see the bill. Do we have those amendments also? So the amendments are here. We have the amendments. It's one page. Amendment number 7 goes on to the back page. of that. Anything complicated about these amendments? Anything difficult to understand? I don't necessarily want to read through all 7 of them right now if we don't have to.
No, Mr. Chair. They're mostly technical amendments, a word missing here or there. There was an addition to a provision that said anyone who took an active act to put something into the navigable water could be held accountable. But in relation to what the harbor master was discussing, anyone who also didn't take an act to keep something up, for instance, the pier at the harbor marina, and pieces of it are breaking off, that was also added in as part of the violation. I don't recall what the other ones are, but nothing was complicated.
Nothing complicated. Okay, but they're all explained in your bill report? Yes. Okay, great. Committee members, I'll just ask everybody to look over the law department report between now and next week, and then we'll vote on the amendments at that time. DOT, the bill has been presented. Anything to add, DOT?
No, Mr. Chair, we just have a favorable report.
Great, thank you. Who else is this referred to? Finance?
Gabriel Stewart Sykewitz from the Department of Finance. We do not anticipate a cost for the city as a result of this legislation, as the dock master is already budgeted for in DOT.
Great, thank you. DHCD?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We stand behind our favorable bill report. To keep it short, we think that this is rational and in alignment with historical practice, and we appreciate our friends over at DOT for their thoughtful presentation and explanation for why this was necessary.
Great, thank you. Planning?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Tisa for the Department of Planning. We have a favorable report for you today. And of course, planning will remain a partner where the water's edge interacts with landward developments such as the promenade and other waterfront developments. Other than that, we defer to DOT as the more directly impacted agency.
Great, thank you. Police Department?
Good morning, Kara Ashburn on behalf of the Baltimore Police Department. We stand behind our favorable bill report and stand ready to support DOT in whatever capacity they need.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee for any of the reporting agencies? Okay, do we have anybody here to give public testimony on this bill? Tony, does it appear we have anybody online to give public testimony on this bill?
Not on this bill, sir.
Okay, great. Then we will recess this bill until next week. Thank you. Next, 260197 RPP Area 48 Riverside Revisions. Councilman Blanchard, please take the stage. Thank you. Any agencies or staff that don't need to be here for any other bills, have a nice day. Thank you for being here. Councilman Blanchard, 260197 RPP Area 48 Riverside Revisions. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to check, Jeff Brown is on virtual, I believe. That's correct? Okay, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. This is a effort that the RPP area down around Riverside Park has been working on for several years now. It's a community-led effort to make some adjustments. Happy to support. I think there's been good, pretty broad community collaboration and diligence on it. And we've got the RPP area liaison, I think is the term, Jeff Brown on, who can talk more to the details of it.
Great. Any questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Okay, thank you. Would you like us to hear from Jeff right now, or shall we?
I think that would be the time to.
Okay, we'll just hear from
do
Jeff
it if
now.
that's appropriate.
Tony?
He's unmuted, sir.
Okay, ready.
Yeah, good morning. I'm unmuted, I believe. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for having me today. I just wanted to be available in case there were questions, but the genesis behind this is that a couple things. First, the original parking plan for Riverside, which was drafted in 2017 or 2018, planned to have RPP parking around Riverside Park, but not until such a time as the homes bordering the park had petitioned into the area, and with hours not starting until 11 p.m. so that we could accommodate, people using the park during normal park hours. Subsequent to that, when we first instituted our area, we had 2 hours of, unrestricted parking, even in permit hours. That was later changed to remove that, largely due to enforcement issues. And when that was changed, there was an oversight that the churches in the neighborhood had special permits, but those are only good until 7 p.m. And currently, our parking doesn't start until 6 p.m., so the permits only give churches like 1 hour of extra parking. So that was sort of the first, I guess that was the first problem. And then, I don't know if I had in my head, there was a second issue. I'm trying to remember what it was. But in any case, what brought this all to a head was Johnson Street. The residents where the homes are on Johnson Street petitioned in about 1.5 years ago. And so that got us moving ahead with the RPP around the park on Johnson Street. And we went and spoke to the churches about that to let them know it was happening. They raised the concerns about the number of parking permits and also the hours. And so we collaborated with them to put this plan together. And that's kind of in a summary how this happened. Happy to answer any questions that you have. And of course, we also coordinated with the Federation for the Blind, the two churches, and also Thomas Johnson Elementary School, which is also on Johnson Street. The original plan was approved by Parks and Recs years ago. We've reached out to them several times just to see if they would reaffirm their support, but at least 3 times. And I sent some of that correspondence to the parking authority for them to look at. They haven't said anything about it. They haven't reaffirmed it or denied it either way. So that's where things stand.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Any questions? Okay, great. Thank you. This is simple, straightforward. I hate our RPP, but if you're happy, I'm happy. Mayor's Office, thank you. Mayor's Office of Small Minority Business Advocacy and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Mayor's Office of Small Minority Business Advocacy is favorable for this bill.
Great. DOT?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no recommendation to stand by our bill report.
Great. Thank you. Finance?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair. We do not oppose, and we expect a maximum annual revenue impact of $760 as detailed in our bill report.
Big money. Yeah. Law?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Desiree Lucky on behalf of the Law Department. We approve this bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you. PABC?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Christmas Age Parking Authority. We stand by our favorable bill report.
Great. Any agency questions from the staff, from the committee members here? Awesome. Love it. Any further public testimony on this bill? Nobody in person, nobody online. Who wants to make a motion that we vote this bill? Vice Chair Middleton moves the bill favorable. We have no amendments for the bill. Great. All in favor of approving this bill, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstain. Great. This bill will be recommended favorable to the full council at its next meeting. Councilman Blanchard, take the stage again, will you please? Council Bill 260175, street names, authority to change suffix.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, PABC. Thank you to others who didn't need to be here for any other bills. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
All right. So up until I think it was the late 1970s, you could have the suffix of a street change to match the character of that right-of-way, right? So if you have 4 blocks that are a street and 1 block that is an alley, you could have that block be called, Johnson Alley, right? If you had if it's around a monument or has a nice big park in the middle of it or something, and you wanted to call it place instead of street or avenue or boulevard or whatever, you could do that. At some point in the late 70s, the council's ability to do that was precluded. And so under the current city code, you have to change the whole name of the thoroughfare, right? So to use a good example of something that I am specifically interested in doing and what sort of brought up this original conversation, Utah Street around Lexington Market and near Camden Yards, that is Utah Street, which makes sense because it's a street. Up around the big linear park that is Utah Place, it's called Place, right? We see that around monuments and other types of things. That's a pretty common thing. And it matches the character. We want the name, the suffix of the thoroughfare to match the character of it, right? In State Center, which God willing is about to have a very large scale, state-led revitalization effort. What those 3 blocks are currently called Utah Street. So I was interested in the plan is to extend the linear park south all the way to MLK. So for those 3 blocks. So it'll feel like Utah Place. So I was like, okay, well, let's change the name so it can be Utah Place and match that. And that's when we learned that you can't actually do that. You would need to change the whole name, which obviously to change, for folks who can picture the space in front of Lexington Market, to call that Utah Place doesn't really make any sense, right? And so the intent here is just to give the council the ability in these sort of, weird, odd situations where it's appropriate to do so, the ability to change the suffix of the street name. So I don't foresee this happening very often over the course of a council term. If anything, I could see it as a situation where alleys, which are currently labeled streets but are actually alleys, would be able to have the name appropriately changed. It's probably the most common one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think it probably took me 10 years to even remember what the suffix was on my own street. So, any questions for the chair? For the bill sponsor, Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward. I imagine there's some places too where a mismatch between the suffix and the nature of the street gives people the impression that a certain style of driving or speed would be appropriate when otherwise not. I can think of a few places either officially or unofficially called highway in the city, which are in fact like local streets. Pulaski Highway, for example, is incredibly dangerous. And so it's a name that's kind of imported from the county as it comes into the city. But we changed the name to Orleans Street around Elwood Avenue, but that doesn't necessarily stop people from treating portions of Pulaski Highway inside the city as fundamentally very dangerous situations. And there's other places that I think are even more clear examples of a highway when in fact it's a neighborhood street with stop signs and stoplights and pedestrians and things like that. Any commentary?
I have a very comparable situation like that in my district, and I would fully agree. And when you call something a highway that's not a highway, let's say it's 1.3 miles long and has 13 red lights, which is very not highway-like, hypothetically speaking, it's not only confusing for people driving, it's also confusing for the surrounding community. It's also confusing for the Department of Transportation. And people make assumptions about what the street is supposed to do based off the name. So even though this feels like a silly niche thing, like I've run into this on a couple of occasions. I actually had, interestingly enough, had a random conversation recently with a personal friend of mine who happens to work for Southwest Partnership. And it was complaining about a situation where they have an alley that they were trying to gate. And, but I guess it's called street, even though it's actually an alley. And there was some challenges with DOT because of that. So it is sort of I was like, that's really funny because we have legislation going forward that would make it easier to address that. So it seems random. It is pretty random, but there will be some occasions where it is actually helpful.
Anything else from the committee?
Giving the council more authority on anything is good in my book, so I move we support this bill.
Well, my comment before we vote on this, I just think we need more muse. We don't have enough muse in Baltimore City. Also, I guess, question for the bill sponsor, is there any limitation on the suffixes that can be used? I think that a Blanchard is like a good term for a type of street, right? Like, I'm thinking, I can't remember whether I live on Crossland Avenue or Crossland Road. I'd love to just rename it Crossland Blanchard.
Mr. Chair, you're making me nervous that you're going to convince some council members to vote against this legislation. So, to answer your question in all seriousness, I got to check, did we have...
Please don't answer this question in any
okay.
seriousness.
Okay, deal. Then I won't answer it. Thank you.
Okay.
And just to clarify the two things to note here. One, it only addresses the suffix, right? It's not it clarifies what that is. You can't just change the name of the street. It would be specifically for the suffix. The second thing to note is that doesn't impact, it doesn't, like, for example, if I was trying to send mail to the 100 block of North Utah Street, and I sent it to 101 North Utah Place. 101 North Utah Place doesn't exist. The mail would still get there because it's 101 North Utah. So it's a not complicating situation from a postal perspective, because there's no overlapping. You're not going to end up with another one example like that in the city. So that was something that we considered.
Cool. I'm going to vote for this bill, but I expect your support when I introduce the bill to change my street to Crossland Blanchard. Law Department?
Good morning, Desiree Lucky on behalf of the Law Department. We approve this bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you. Who else? Planning?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. We have a favorable recommendation and defer to DOT as a more directly impacted agency.
Great, thank you. DOT.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had an opportunity to talk to the bill sponsor, thank you, about the need for the bill. And after clarifying and, understanding that this is a shared authority between DOT and the council to rename streets and change suffixes as necessary, and this is actually a self-imposed restriction on the council that the council is free to change. And also understanding that we already have a system for reviewing and either approving or recommending against the names or changes to the names of streets through our bill report system. We are happy to provide a favorable report on this bill.
How will you report when Councilman Blanchard wants to establish a street called Blanchard?
Mr. Chair, that is a cruel question to ask.
Okay. Any other questions for any of the agencies or the mayor's office? Anything? Okay, great. I'll move this bill favorable. Oh, wait, let's make sure we don't have any public testimony. There's nobody here in person to give public testimony. Anything online, Tony? All right, great. I move the bill favorable.
Second.
Great. All in favor of this, of recommending this bill favorable to the council, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstain. Great. This bill will be recommended favorable to the full council at its next meeting. Councilman Parker, take the stage. Council Bill 260153, measurement of building height, gambrel roofs, and with amendment, not only gambrel roofs, as I understand it. All right, great. It's the eject button. Yeah, the floor, actually, it's like the trapdoor button.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You fall through the floor.
I hadn't
when
noticed
your
it
time
before.
runs
I
out.
feel like
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be here with you all today. The bill is really straightforward. Let me describe currently how the goal is to modify the way in which we measure the heights of buildings. This is important because our zoning code talks about how tall buildings can be. And so it's fine to have a rule about how tall they can be, but if we're not clear, or there could be more clarity on how we measure the height of buildings, which you would think would be straightforward, but is not exactly, then it's hard for city agencies and folks and people building buildings to know exactly what they're working with. And so the goal here is clarity all around. This came up in particular, as many of the bill reports mentioned, because of a particular case in my district where I hope a very well compensated lawyer came up with a very creative interpretation of the law to slap what we'll talk about as a gambrel roof on top of kind of a normal single-family home, and in order to completely evade the existing height limitations in that district. So upon experiencing that, I went and looked at other cities. Other cities had a little bit more clarity about how to measure different kinds of roof heights, and brought that to housing and planning. They came back, helped me write the portion that I have, and also suggested another modification that will, I think, strengthen our ability to do enforcement and have clarity here. The current law says that a flat roof, and this does not change, the height of roof is the highest point of the roof that adjoins the street wall, in the case of a pitched roof, the current law is to the mean height of the level of the roof as measured between the eaves and the peak in the case of a pitched roof. So halfway between essentially the bottom of the roof and the top of the roof in a pitched roof. There's an amendment proposed to that as well. In the case, and then what I've proposed here, in the case of a gambrel roof, which is a roof that has, you see gambrel up there, right
This is
there in the
what a
middle.
lot of folks would refer to as a Cape Cod style house.
Yeah, or think of like a barn. A barn often kind of has this shape.
Got two pitches.
With two pitches, right? So what happened here was that, okay, this is a pitched roof, and so they measured from the very top all the way to the bottom of the bottom portion of the pitched roof, which goes pretty far down the side of the building, right? And conceivably, if you want to be ridiculous, you could keep that going at great. I mean, instead of just being one story, it could be 2 stories of a gambrel roof going down, and you would measure the height of the building at the halfway point from the bottom, from the eaves all the way to the top, and so kind of you'd wind up with a really silly looking building, and also a building significantly oversized for the space. There's all kinds of pitched roofs, as you can see there. I will say, above us is a form of a gambrel roof in that a mansard roof has one pitch and then flat, right? What we have here above us on City Hall, and there's another second image of that. You can see here, Tony, you want to flip to it? I sent another image, that's all right. Anyway, you all remember what City Hall looks like. Above this portion, there is an entire kind of floor worth of shingles on the side of the building, and then a second pitch on top. And so like the height of that under current law would be the midway point between the top of the pitch section and the very bottom of what appears to be the same roofing material, which is like a full story beneath the actual height of the building. So for gambrel roofs, this proposes that the mean height would simply be the average of the top pitch section. So you ignore the bottom pitch section completely and say that top pitch section, it's going to be the average between the bottom of that and the top of that, and that's really what the law intended to do to begin with. The amendment impacts pitched roofs in general, and so think back to a normal standard roof. It is replacing 2 things. Right now, it is from the peak to the eaves, from top to bottom to the peak to the eaves. The amendment changes peak to the highest point of the roof, right, to just give greater clarity about what peak means. So the highest point of the roof, and then instead of eaves, substitutes the top of the highest wall plate. So for those of you who have been involved in construction, the wall plate, the highest wall plate is essentially the framing of the wall, right? Think of your rectangular framing. Think of your double 2x4s at the top of that. That's the top plate on the wall, and so you're going to start measuring the bottom of the height of a roof from where the top of the wall ends under it. And again, because sometimes eaves can extend significantly farther than that. Think of like an A-frame construction, which we don't see much of here in Baltimore, but a building where like the roof goes all the way, it's a single pitch, it's not gambrel, it goes all the way from peak all the way to the ground, right? But you have 2 or 3 stories inside it, right? And so instead of measuring the halfway point from the peak all the way to the ground in an A-frame structure, what you're doing is you're measuring from the peak to the top wall plate. So let's say it's an A-frame structure with 2 stories.
The one measurement is taken from the exterior, from the peak of the roof. The other is taken from the interior of essentially the ceiling of the highest story inside of the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yep.
Can I just, it sounds like you're wrapping up here, right?
I'm good. Yeah.
If we just go back to just for clarity on this, the image that we just had. So like my parents' house has a hip roof, and there are 2 full stories below the eaves. The bottom of the roof begins at the
top plate.
Top of the highest wall plate. And so the roof is really entirely above the livable area of the house, where the bedrooms are on the 2nd floor and the living room, the kitchen and such are on the 1st floor. Whereas with a gambrel roof, it's typical for there to be livable area well within the height of that roof. The lower, steeper pitch of that gambrel roof generally is along the exterior of the 2nd floor of the house. You have 1 full story below, and then you have a 2nd story within the span of the roof, and it's only that like less steep 2nd pitch generally that is going to be the roof section that would be comparable to the hip roof that my parents' house has, right? So this is why this makes sense to not be measuring the maximum height of the building from the start of the 2nd floor, basically, or the top of the 1st floor, as opposed to the top of the 2nd floor, which is going to be effectively where the top of the highest wall plate is up to the highest point of the roof.
Yep,
exactly. Okay, great. Any questions here for the bill sponsor from the committee? Okay, thank you. Bill reports from Law Department.
Good morning, Desiree Lucky on behalf of the Law Department. We approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you. DOT?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no recommendation on the bill.
Great, thank you. Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission reviewed this in their meeting of April 2nd and recommended amendment and approval, and you have already heard the amendment from the sponsor about the change to the measurement of the highest wall plate to the point of the roof.
Great, thank you. BMZA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. BMZA is favorable with the Planning Commission's amendments.
Great. Is the mayor's office going to ask the state legislature to remove the requirement that we send these bills to BMZA for the upcoming legislative session in 2027?
You know, I can take that back to
They're
the
very well aware of it. I want to hear a yes next time. Thank you. DHCD.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We stand behind our favorable bill report.
Great, thank you. Any questions for any of these agencies? Any in-person public testimony here? Councilman Bullock's laptop is still here, so I do imagine he's coming right back, but he's not going to cry if we vote this bill. Any online testimony, Tony? Okay. It's kind of fun to say, testimony, Tony. Do we have a motion to vote favorable on the amendment?
So moved.
It's been moved. All in favor of adopting this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Great. This amendment will be, is approved for favorable recommendation. Is there a recommendation to approve or vote favorable on this bill with the amendment from Councilman Parker? All in favor of recommending this bill favorable with the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstention? Did you notice how on the first vote, I almost said nay? I think I said a while ago, every time I say all opposed, say nay. I just want to say nay, just. This bill will be recommended favorable with the amendment to the council at its next meeting. Again, take this as our announcement that we will be voting on the Harbor Master Bill, 260178 at our next committee convening, which is 1 week from today, where we have numerous other mostly property-specific bills on the agenda for that day. One last thing, Tony, are we able to add on to that? Are we going to get a memo to add on to that, the sale of property bill that the comptroller's office asked us about?
I can take it to the CP's office.
Yeah, please do that. We probably want to add on one other sale of property bill at the request of the comptroller's office. They contacted us in May about it, and we were not to a point where we were making any committee announcements yet. And then somehow I overlooked that one when we were doing the announcements for today and next week. So we're going to add on just one thing and take 5 minutes. We are concluding here for the day. Thank you.